Ladies and gents, hello and welcome. My name, of course, is Potato, and this is a look at Civ 6's newly announced expansion, Gathering Storm. Before we dive into talking about it, let's first watch the trailer, and oh boy, it's an interesting one.
Human advancement knows no boundary. But this has not been without its price. Though we stand at the height of prosperity, we need only look to the past to remember that nature is a power that cannot be ignored. Consuming even the mightiest empires and causing the greatest among us to tremble in her fury. Yet from adversity, the human spirit endures, finding ways to coexist with the earth. Or bend it to our cause. Pursuing a course beyond distant horizons. And revealing paths. Both towards innovation and unintended catastrophe. Our survival necessitates new solutions to old problems. To ensure a future, both for ourselves and generations to come. United in purpose, we must now look beyond borders and welcome the dawn of the next era in human civilization.
Well, that was some trailer, and I am just super hyped for this. I thought we would go over all of the stuff that was announced, try and concisely cover it, and perhaps offer my thoughts on the Gathering Storm expansion and some of the most exciting mechanics to be introduced. So this is the official announcement, the Civilization 6 Gathering Storm release page. And as you can see, in the very first paragraph, it tells us exactly what we're going to see introduced, because, of course, that was just a cinematic trailer, whereas in practice, we're going to see new technologies, engineering projects, the World Congress, and a living world ecosystem that showcases natural events. Very, very cool indeed. It's also going to add 8 new civilizations, 9 new leaders, 7 new world wonders, a variety of new units, districts, buildings, improvements, and more. Yada, yada, yada. Either way, the key stuff is here. It's going to add a bunch of new technologies. It's going to add a bunch of engineering projects, the World Congress, and it's also going to introduce a living world ecosystem. Now, all of that, right? It's got to be the living world ecosystem that is the key. That is the key to this expansion. And that's because global warming and natural disasters are going to play a huge part. So we're just going to go through the announcement and see exactly what's going on. So straight away in this screenshot from the game, you can already see that there is a dam right here, and that is going to play an important role when it comes to protecting your town from floods. It's also presumably going to be able to generate electricity for your town, because we know that that there's going to be a new mechanic that is going to introduce power, and we're going to talk about that a little bit further on. But you know, you can already see that there is a bunch of new stuff, and also who could miss these absolutely huge volcanoes just chilling out in the background. So volcanoes, another aspect which are going to be introduced in this game. Anyway, yes, volcanoes, storms, and floods, all of the natural disasters that I was talking about. Yeah, so this is kind of radical in the way that it's in the way that it works. So here we're basically just talking about floodplains, grasslands, next to rivers, etc. But what's interesting now is that you can settle them, but if you settle them, there is a chance that they flood. Now, of course, flooding is usually a bad thing, but in some cases there can be a good reason for flooding. You know, if ground continuously floods, then you will see that the crop yield for that ground will be a bit higher, probably temporarily higher, but that's a really cool mechanic. So you now need to think even more carefully about how you're going to place your city, where you're going to place your city, and build it up in a certain way so that you're not being too negatively affected by some of the natural disaster nonsense, and you know, you're perhaps getting some of the benefits from the floodplain. Volcanoes, which we've already seen in the screenshot. Yeah, this is super cool. Eruptions are going to occur periodically. Now, I don't know if you're going to have any indication of when these eruptions are going to be. I would presume not. You know, most of the time, unless you know have unless you've got, you know, a scientist or a geologist on hand, I imagine that you're probably not going to be able to tell when the volcano is going to erupt. So if you're trying to sneak some troops past the volcano, try and get close to an enemy city, then you might be shocked when the volcano erupts and perhaps kills a whole bunch of your troops. It also presents a significant barrier on the map. So you know, if we go back and have a little look up here, it's a whole tile. It's just as prohibitive as a mountain. So it's gonna be annoying to deal with them, but oh boy, they do look super cool. Yeah, and I'm really excited for volcanoes, really. So yeah, go volcanoes, really. Volcanoes are going to play into the natural wonder system, and I would suspect actually that a bunch of the natural wonders that are actually going to be added, I would suspect probably a couple of them will be volcanoes. So so that'll be somewhat interesting, and I imagine that there will be some benefit to the some benefit to discovering, or some additional benefit to discovering the volcanoes. They mentioned here as well that the yields provided by the volcanic soil will be left behind. Obviously, that is kind of a little bit of a problem. I imagine that this is the volcanic soil right here. That is kind of a little bit of a problem, because if you want to, you know, do something in this area, then there is a potential that the volcano will erupt again. And if you don't know how long it's going to be before it erupts, well, then you could build a really valuable building on it, on the tile, and not see any use for it. So very cool indeed. Storms is another thing, and what's really cool is the way that it's going to work with the environment specifically, but more the biomes, and also with some of the buildings, or some of the new buildings, should I say, like the dam. So first of all, let's talk about the dam. Now, the dam is going to be a fantastic way to generate clean electricity, as you can see right here. There we go. And the power system. The power system is a brand new system that is going to be added with the expansion. Now, this to me seems like the thing which is really going to change almost everything, because you're adding a brand new requirement for every city in your civilization. You're adding the power requirement, right? Now, I don't know any of the negative modifiers of not having enough power, and I don't even know what other buildings you're going to have. What other buildings you're going to have in order to generate power. Although one presumes that, you know, much like you have a dam to generate clean hydroelectricity, you're going to have the opportunity to build coal and oil-fired power plants, which are, of course, going to contribute to pollution. And that's another sort of mechanic that ties into this whole idea of global warming, which is at the very center of this expansion. So that's very, very cool indeed. We're also going to see the introduction of a canal district. We're also going to see the introduction of what are they called? Like aqueducts. So you can maybe take your ships across land, which is very, very cool indeed. I'm pretty excited for that, and that's going to really change up the way that you sort of use canals, transportation, and just getting around really with ships in a certain area, which is really, really nice. Global warming and climate change. Yeah, we've already touched on this. You can see, by the way, here you've got a canal, so you can see that you can get your boats between two different sides, two different water masses, which is really, really cool. Yeah, so the global warming system and climate change, as I say, really is the sort of central theme of this expansion. And this will primarily take effect in the second half of the game. As I said a little bit earlier, from the medieval, I believe I said earlier anyway, the medieval era onwards, you can build the dam. So I'm presuming that it's going to be around about the same time, maybe a little bit later on, that you're going to be able to start implementing all of this power infrastructure, so to speak. The power system to improve effectiveness of some of your late game buildings. There are strategic resources that can be used for fuel, and that's coal, uranium, and oil. But doing so will have an adverse effect on CO2 levels in the world and impact the global temperature of the planet. Now, of course, the global temperature of the planet will increase the chances of flooding and storm. Sea levels can rise and may melt the polar ice caps. Oh my goodness. So if you're settling a city at the coast, then you got to be worried, especially in the late game, where you could in effect just have water completely overwhelm a city. So that's something that you're really, really going to want to think about in terms of placement. But thankfully, it's not all doom and gloom. Those are just the ways that you can generate power with fossil fuels. You can also generate green alternatives, alternative energy options, so geothermal energy, wind farms, solar farms, and we already talked about hydroelectricity and creating electricity in the dam, which you can also see. You can see another dam in this screenshot as well. So that is pretty darn cool as well. And also this will tie in. It was like I planned this, honestly, and this is going to tie into the World Congress. So they're gonna be adding a whole bunch of. In fact, well, actually, let's talk about the whole World Congress system. They're gonna be overhauling it pretty much completely. So you will have a new currency to track your diplomatic goodwill, and that currency is going to be called favor. Now, it serves as a voting power, and you get the world community to adopt your ideas. On the other side, we've replaced the warmonger score with grievances. This acts as a tug of war. Yeah, very, very interesting. But what's going to be really cool is what you can actually do with your favor and how you go about getting it. So you can apparently you can trade favor in a trade agreement. You can also gain favor by helping out the other civilizations. For example, if they say don't settle near me, and you say, well, I don't really care what you think, then you're probably gonna, you're not gonna gain any favor. However, if you say, okay, I'm not gonna settle near you, and you don't settle near them for the 10 turns or whatever that is required, then you're gonna be getting favor. So that's really, really cool. And also the way in which you use favor is going to be sort of interesting in the World Congress. If you know that there is something that is really bad that you think might get implemented, then you might want to save up your favor points in order to prevent that from happening. And as we go on, we can sort of see exactly what you can sort of do. So some of the new events that are going to be introduced, or new policies, should I say, that can be introduced in the World Congress. Disaster relief and emergencies. And emergencies, by the way, in the Rise and Fall expansion have been rolled into the World Congress in Gathering Storm. So we're gonna see emergencies, but they are going to be taking place in like a pseudo World Congress style event. So that's really, really, really cool. But anyway, I was talking about policies in the World Congress. So, you know, you might see a policy that where was it? It was just here. Yeah, for example, you may vote to ban furs or chopping rainforests, or all players might choose to ban further building construction in a certain district. Alternatively, you may vote to encourage fur collecting or encourage the chopping down of rainforests. You know, so there is this there's this option that you have, and it will all tie into to sort of idea of global warming. Presumably, if you chop down more rainforests, then the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere that is being filtered out will be lower, and therefore sea levels are likely to rise faster. Now, of course, if I'm playing a civilization with a bunch of coastal cities, I want to do everything possible to make sure that the world is using green energy, so that all of my cities aren't going to get flooded. And that's just something that you'll need to consider. It's like another layer of complexity onto what is already a pretty complex game. And speaking of a complex game, the way that a diplomatic victory is achieved has been completely changed. So there will now be a periodic vote for a world leader. However, this grants you points towards the diplomatic victory condition. So it's not just a single vote, and the way in which you go about getting favors actually makes it more complicated. So it's not just a case of influencing city-states, getting enough votes, going to the World Congress and voting, for yourself as world leader and winning the game. You get points each and every time you become the world leader, and you just need to keep on doing that, and those points will go towards a diplomatic victory. So that's going to be a very, very interesting change. There's also going to be a bunch of extra technologies added, and civics that are going to be added at the end of the current tech tree. It's going to be called the Future Era, I do believe. I don't really know what techs are going to be in here, but I think it'll probably be interesting. So that's gonna be kind of cool. Future tech, it's probably going to be sort of speculative stuff on what you can, or on what we could potentially research in the near future. But again, no real idea on what this stuff is going to be. And finally, just briefly talking about some of the new civilizations. Yeah, there's going to be 8 of them. No real idea what they're going to be. 9 new leaders, apparently. So that's going to be really, really cool as well. It's also worth noting that as well as adding new civilizations, they're also slightly changing some of the existing civilizations to better tie them in with geography. So, for example, if you start as France, then chances are, if you start next to a river, that river will be called the Seine, so that's the river that goes through, or one of the rivers, I believe, that maybe the only river. Either way, it's the river that goes through Paris. So they're basically just tying natural geographical characteristics to the specific civilization, which is also really, really cool. And I'm really excited to see that. So honestly, I'm really, really excited for all of the features that are going to be coming up in Gathering Storm. The largest expansion that Firaxis have ever created for a civilization game, which is really, really quite cool, actually, when you think about it. So, in brief, we've got the environmental effects, which is the volcanoes, the storms, the blizzards, storms, tornadoes, and hurricanes, and those, I do believe, will be biome-specific. So we'll see hurricanes on the sea, we'll see blizzards over the tundra, sandstorms over the desert, and tornadoes over plains and whatnot, I guess. Climate change, floods and droughts, power consumption and consumable products, strategic resources playing an extra role, burning coal, burning oil, but also the opportunity to, if you'd like, use renewable energy in order to fulfill those power demands. A bunch of engineering projects that are going to make a really, really big difference to the geography of the game. Canals, which we've talked about, dams, tunnels, and railroads. That's also really, really cool. Also, you're going to have to make sure that you settle cities, which will complement, or which will better complement the geography. So you're going to make sure that you want to place farms on floodplain tiles. You're not going to want to place your city right next to a volcano. That would be, you know, common sense sort of stuff. World Congress, which we literally just talked about, in the whole new way that that diplomatic favor will be earned, and also the way in which a diplomatic victory is achieved. Very, very cool. Brand new techs, brand new technology and civics, which will be speculative ideas, as I sort of mentioned earlier. So that'll also be interesting. A bunch of new civilizations and a bunch of new leaders as well. A couple of new scenarios, which, if you're interested, you can have a little look there. And of course, just to wrap things up, we're going to see 7 new world wonders, 7 natural wonders, 18 new units, 15 new improvements, 9 new buildings, 5 districts, 2 new city sets, 9 new techs, and 10 new civics will be added. As I say, I suspect that that some of the natural wonders, I suspect some of them will be volcanoes. I suspect that we're going to see maybe 2 or 3, maybe not 3, but certainly I reckon maybe one of the new 7 will be a volcano specific, and then if there is already a volcano in the existing natural wonder set, then that will also be upgraded to be a proper volcano. So that's really interesting. They're also going to improve the espionage system with a couple of new options. Culture and scientific victories are going to be updated, and new historic moments have been added, and some additional improvements have been made to other systems. Wow, holy cow, it looks like an absolute corker of an expansion. I'm super, super, super excited to play it. I'm most excited about the power system. I think that's going to be a real game changer, right? Because I mean, how are you going to allocate resources to power? Where are you going to build your power production facilities? I don't know. It's really going to sort of make you consider your decisions on where you place buildings and how you go about generating resources. It's just going to add that extra layer of complexity. Also, a whole bunch of the environmental effects and the way in which you counter them, either through engineering projects or through the World Congress. Very, very interesting. I'm super excited, and yeah, it's going to be a really, really, really interesting expansion. It comes out on PC on February the 14th in 2019, so we got a couple of months to wait, but I'm ready. My body is ready for it. I'm absolutely going to be playing it, so if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the near future. Ladies and gents, thank you very much for watching. My name, of course, has been ObitoPotato. This has been an analysis video of the Civilization 6 Gathering Storm expansion.